Jesus would go on to talk about John the Baptist as being the greatest man ever born. And while John was great in what he did and said, today he reveals a not so great side. He's doing the work of God. He's baptizing people for repentance, basically turning back to God's way, not your own way. And that's fine. That's what he's supposed to be doing. That's why he was born. That's why he is here. But then the whole second part of the reading, I was tempted to leave it off, and I said, no, this is part of John. The Pharisees and the Sadducees show up. John was not called to judge who should be repenting or who should be baptized. He was called to baptize people for repentance, that they might turn their lives around. John's not in charge of their repentance. They are, and with God's help. If they go through the motions and nothing happens and they don't change, well, God knows. It's not your job, John. But what he reveals to us here is 2,000 years later, it's like, yeah, how often in our own lives do we take the John the Baptist role and say, oh, those people, they're going to burn in everlasting fire. It's like, no, God does not call us to judge. And in fact, we hear it in the first reading. And I love Advent because we hear so much from Isaiah. Isaiah talks about the Lord coming with peace, with righteousness. He doesn't come to beat us all down, to toss us into the fire. He comes to bring us to the kingdom. A kingdom we can't even begin to imagine. We talk about peace that passes all understanding. It's so peaceful that even all of creation is at peace. It's not just simply we're not at war with each other, or we don't fight with each other, or we don't judge each other. Those people, they need to go everlasting flames. No. It's a peace that permeates everything. And Isaiah talks about it, and I'm sure this had to influence Pope Francis when he wrote his encyclical on Laudate Si, because he writes about peace of all creation. So he takes animals that would normally not be at peace with each other. The lion and the lamb will lie down. It doesn't say the lion will have lamb chops for dinner. And I prefer the translation we use in the States, where the cow and the bear will browse together. It's like, especially during the season here, it's like I can just picture a cow and a bear going to the Macy's and looking in the windows and saying, "What do you want for Christmas?" But graze together is really what they're talking about. They're not killing each other, even though they might be natural enemies and they might, out of hunger want to do this. No, that's the peace that Christ came to bring. That's what Isaiah talked about. And maybe John needed to read a little bit more from Isaiah to understand that it's about God's will. It's about God's peace. Not about what we decide and how we're going to do it, but how God does it. And so when we jump on the John bandwagon and say, oh, you Sadducees and you Pharisees, oh, you're going to get it. Not all Sadducees and Pharisees were evil people. Didn't say they were there to pick on John, and yet he was casting them off. We need to learn from that, to say, do we do that in our own lives? Are we instruments of God's peace in our life and in our world? And it goes beyond us. It's not, we can't do it on our own. If we look just for our own peace, that's pretty feeble. It's that peace that calls us to forgive when it's very difficult. It's that peace that basically, look at the description, to go against our own nature. The lion doesn't eat the lamb. It's like, but he might be hungry. Well, they're going to eat grass instead. It's like to go against who we are. Go against the human nature that we may embrace the divine nature. Jesus comes to bring a kingdom of peace that we cannot begin to imagine. Isaiah tries to paint a picture of it with his description so that we can understand that unless we can change in here, we're never going to change out there. It's not about, and I was talking to someone the other day about that oh, well, that these people need to do this, and that, and the leaders need to do this, and these countries need to do it. It's like, yeah, well, that's fine. But what do I need to do? I need to look and find that peace in here. And it's not my peace, because we look for my peace, we're going to miss it. We'll get a piece of peace, but not the whole thing. Look for the peace of Christ that comes to us, that we celebrate on Christmas, that comes to us daily in our lives. To grab onto that peace, to hold firm to that peace, and let it grow. Foster it. Don't let our own human nature keep squishing it, but rather let that grow. And as we are more and more people of peace, that grows in us, and we radiate it out to others, to the people who are sometimes hard to be peaceful with. For John, it was the Sadducees and the Pharisees, but the people in our lives and in our world, that we can radiate that peace that passes all understanding, that peace of the kingdom that we don't know in its fullness, but we know in part, and to grow in that part, to let that part grow in us, that we may be instruments of God's peace. Then we don't have to say they all need to do. It's like, what can I do to bring peace in my life and in my world, that I can show that peace to my brothers and sisters, that hopefully I can invite them to say, wow, I want to be part of that. We had a friar who I knew since I joined the community. He died a few years ago, who was just absolutely, people used to love to come to Graymore to see him, just to be in his presence, because he just radiated peace and joy. And, Brother Joe was his name. He just was, you just wanted to be around him, because it rubbed off. It's like, boy, but the thing is that we needed to had it rub off and to hold on to it. That's what we are called to be. I hold him as a mental image of being that perfection of peace on earth. Not the divine perfection, that's going to be even better, but to say, I need to be like him. I need to radiate peace in my life. Even in the face, I knew he went through physical challenges and illnesses and emotional and other stuff, but he still showed that great peace. That's who we are called to be. We are called to hear those words of Isaiah and say, wow, the kingdom of peace is terrific. I want that. And to let go of part 2 of the gospel of John, let go of our judgment. Christ will come. He'll do the judging. Don't worry about that. Don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to help him by sorting people out. No. Show the peace and the love of God. Even to those who we would just as soon say, oh, you vipers. To say, no. The only way we're going to change people is if we change ourselves. If we allow the peace of God to grow in us, to nurture and to let it flourish, and then to show it. Then we can change the world.